What's the most fireable thing someone has done but they kept the job? This took place in the military and this douche, we shall call Duffy, is lucky to even get off easy. One holiday Duffy was going out of town and asked a co-worker to watch his place and dog. The person watching the dog was doing a horrible job, so I took over. There was poop all over his carpet and the dog tore up some furniture too. While assessing his place I noticed something on his desk. He had 2 monitors with yellow stickers on them. TSC. So he took these from work. We'll talk about that later. Also on his desk there were 5 hard drives with the same sticker. He took classified information out of a secure environment and took it home. All that happened to him was a slap on the wrist and leadership trying to keep it quiet since they knew it would ruin his life if it got out. We had an employee yelling at the owner of the company while the owner was in a meeting with out-of-town clients to stop whining like a little baby and stop acting like a little bee. Sounds like the owner is a little bee if he didn't fire that sucker for his public insubordination. My first job out of college, I worked as the software dev for a small company. It was a great first job, with a great boss, co-workers and opportunity to learn and grow. Unfortunately however, given the tiny size of the IT department, 5 people, including my boss, the CTO, things were done in a fairly unstructured manner oftentimes, sometimes to the point of simply being bad practice. Of particular relevance, I had complete access to the production servers. Despite being an entry-level N006 with a lot to learn, and learn I did. Now I was instructed many times never to deploy any changes to prod without extensively testing them first. However, one day I had a small bug I needed to fix on the retail website's cart page that amounted to simply adding one tiny line of JavaScript to update a variable, thing equals other thing, or something. PSSH. Who'd ever need to test something like that? So, I made the change and went on with my other tasks for the day. The next day, late in the morning, one of the managers noticed that we hadn't received any purchases from the website since the afternoon of the previous day, a total of 10 or so hours of zero activity. Given the average value and frequency of products being sold via the website, it was determined to be approximately $40,000 of lost revenue in a single day. I bet you'd never guess what turned out to be the cause of the problem. I had made a 1-letter typo in one of the variables in the one line of code I added, which caused an undefined variable reference error that resulted in the checkout button not doing anything when you clicked on it. So customers would browse the site and fill up their carts with all the goodies their hearts desired, only to be stuck on the cart page when they were ready to place the order. It was by far the most monetarily damaging thing I've ever done, caused by one of the simplest mistakes someone in my career could make. After all that, I didn't get fired but instead got off on my first, and last, official, written warning. Needless to say, after that, there was no more willy-nilly pushing to prod without consulting a manager first, and for the rest of my life I have seared into my soul the programmer's creed. Always test your crap, and don't do it in prod. A shat. Had a nurse co-worker choke me around the neck and slam me up against the wall one time. I informed my boss and nothing was done. Myself and my other co-workers were all pretty sure from that and other incidents that she had some kind of blackmail on our boss. Guy at work got mad at a printer and smashed it. There were meetings with managers, meetings with peers, anger management policy reviews, HR was involved. The case was formally documented and the punishment was meted out. Until further notice the guy was no longer allowed to use that printer. I am a nurse practitioner. My first job out of school was working for a doctor and her one office manager, who had a vendetta against me because I made more money than her. Anyway, this bee was openly rude to all of my patients when they came in for appointments or called the office. She refused to room and vital my patients, only the doctors. Went on Facebook calling our boss a fricking dyke bee and calling other people homophobic slurs. When I brought this all up to our boss, it was turned into what do you have against office manager. Not only was I never stuck up for, I was made to feel like I was the problem for being the new employee. I put up with this for far too long before finally leaving that practice. I've never seen such unprofessionalism go unpunished. I'm pretty sure our boss was doing something illegal with her business taxes, and the office manager was the bookkeeper, so that's probably why she kept her job. She has since left that job and lasted at her new one for about 1 month. Don't think she's working anymore. I had an employee not show up to work for 9 months. HR said we could not fire him. I am a government employee. This male employee was a routine abuser of sick leave. He exhausted all of his paid leave, then just did not come to work or call in. His time card was coded AWOL. When I submitted his packet for termination, I was told and quoted a reg that stated abandonment of position is not grounds for dismissal. Left a Nokia prototype phone, running Symbian, on the table in a pub while drinking, where it was promptly stolen, never to be seen again. He kept his job, and in fact still kept it when the office was closed about a year later and almost the entire staff team was made redundant. I remember an identical thing happening about 5 years ago with an Apple employee and a prototype iPhone. I think it was Engadget that paid the guy who found it a bunch of money for it. We do oil changes on cars at my job and my co-worker forgets to put the oil cap back on the car, time and time again. This has happened a number of times. I have no idea how he still has a job or even remembers how to breathe. Among other things, he threw a battery on the ground after taking it out of the car and left it there, leaking battery acid, for the morning crew to come in and find. I broke my boss's nose when I was 16. Punched him right in the snout. It was an accident and I never felt worse at work. His wife came in a few days later and thanked me because he stopped snoring. Not sure if she said that to make me feel better, but it kind of made me feel better. A doctor tries to resuscitate a patient on an operating table before the patient's surgery started. He then called the time of death and left the room. A nurse in the room then happened to check for a pulse and noticed that there was one. He spoke up, alerting everyone still in the room that the patient was still alive. The anesthesiologist was against further resuscitation because the time of death was already called. The patient barely lived, thanks to the nurse catching the pulse. The anesthesiologist didn't even so much as get a warning. This was at a VA hospital. My co-worker is super nosy and looked at some confidential documents on my boss's desk that had everyone's pay on it. She told a few people who made what, word got around, and he didn't fire her or write her up. She also gossips with customers who come in and will go shopping next door during work hours. She is my boss's assistant and there are only 3 of us that work in this office, not including the others, here including myself. Basically he is desperate and keeps her around so he doesn't have to be here or work often. Basically he is desperate and keeps her around because he is nailing her. FTFY. My friend got drunk at the Christmas party and told his boss that he is a C with no morals, who deserves to get syphilis or AIDS or whatever. I don't know. Frick off. I think the most important question was whether or not your boss had it coming. My second shift team leader grabbed a bottle of hand lotion and flipped the lid open. He approached a busty co-worker and made grunting sounds and sprayed hand lotion all over her chest. He's still there but I quit 3 years ago. That is mildly horrifying. A co-worker while being written up in the HR office, with HR lady present. I ain't your goddamn den. How he kept his job I'll never know. A supervisor in another department recently screamed at one of our employees until she cried. The employee was about 8 months pregnant at the time. The offense, using the restroom while it was being cleaned. This same suck has also gotten in an employee's face, interrupted a meeting by slamming folders down on another sup's desk, and yelled at various other employees. Dang, let the pregnant lady pee. Being caught masturbating, not even in the bathroom but right there in the cubicle while staring at the office hottie. It helps when your cousin is the project manager. That's not how a project manager would run it. If you look at 100 pictures of hot women at the same time you'll see them 100x faster. This project manager needs to learn how to fast track. I yelled at my boss and I quote, "Your balls is the reason our office is going down the freaking drain, so stop freaking up." The next day I was brought before the Grams. He read my write-up aloud to me, while trying not to laugh and smirk the whole time. Then he sent me home for the rest of the day, and told me to have a nice day and we'll see you tomorrow, all while still smiling. A covered knuckle bump on the way out would have been perfect. I was a teacher at a pretty large school district that I won't name for obvious reasons. As a teacher, I see some pretty horrendous things thanks to the tenure system that has good intentions, but produces terrible teachers and results. Without getting too deep into it, last year they let me go for budget reasons, but the school that I was at kept me on as a long-term sub because they knew me and liked me as a teacher. The teacher they put in my place was a 3-year displaced teacher, meaning the school he was previously had let him go for whatever reason, but thanks to tenure, they paid him his salary for the last 3 years while he sat in a room filled with other displaced teachers who were, you guessed it, collecting their full salaries thanks to their tenure. Anywho, he finally gets placed at our school in my former position and then proceeds to sit at the back of the class and literally do nothing to start the year. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. Nothing on the walls, no syllabus, no lesson plans, nothing. To make matters worse, he doesn't even bother teaching. He proceeded to start the year showing YouTube videos of other people teaching his subject matter. But oh, it gets better. He starts to call in sick. Not just once or twice, but at least 3 days out of the school week every week, but they can't get rid of him thanks to the tenure system. Sorry, I'm still a little upset. I feel like it should be illegal what he's doing by screwing a whole class out of their math education for the year. But at least he still has a job, right? Guy got caught with kiddie pee on his work computer, but because they didn't remove him from the building according to policy, he was able to keep his job. They gave him the option to work from home, so he took it. So now the government of Canada is paying $70k a year for a pedophile who stays at home. Makes me sick. I don't understand why he wouldn't be reported to the police. They could then fire him because he was arrested. Heck, even now I'd just call the cops from a payphone and be like, this guy has child pee. I work in a butcher shop at the present time. Older butcher talks about a time when he worked at a grocery store in his younger years. He requested a day off months in advance and was told last minute that he had to work. So, he ground up a whole box of beef tenderloins, the cut that becomes fillets. That's about $1,200 to $1,500 worth of beef straight into the garbage. He worked there for years after that incident. I bet that would have made some decent burgers though. When I worked in leisure, one of our lifeguards took a crap in one of the bins at the center I worked at. His excuse was that he wanted to make sure the cleaners changed the bins. I have a former lance corporal on payroll. She's the only woman in my tiny company. One day I hired a new guy because I had just secured 3 more clients. He seemed alright at first, but I'd catch him making eyes at this girl. Now, yeah, that's a warning sign. But I decided to keep tabs on him, and if she ever complained, he was out the door. Instead, he lasted a week, started making skeevy compliments on her attire, and one day, made what was probably the biggest mistake he'd ever make. Hopefully once, he grabbed her butt. Everyone in the office saw it, and it went from 0-100 really quick. She whipped around, decked him in the nose, took his hand, and bent 2 of his fingers all the way to the wrist. You could hear the crack as they broke. If you ever do that again to anyone, I will find you, and next time, it won't be your fingers. Ice. Freaking cold. I probably should have fired her, too, for jumping to violence like that, and it cost me a pretty penny to get a lawyer to defend her during the civil suit that followed, and to pay for the guy's medical bills. But, I mean, I am not blaming her for doing it, and I was happy to pay the lawyer. The guy was pathetic. If anything were to happen to me, she'd be the one to take over, I think. Holy crap, as a female that's awesome and scary at the same time. I would have given him a few warnings before I would have done that, not even capable, haha, but I bet he will never grab a girl's butt again. When I worked at a summer camp, I had one particular member of staff that everyone knew probably wouldn't last. He was openly xenophobic, made the girls feel uncomfortable, that sort of deal. Anyway, because he was the son of a coach, it was a sports camp, he was able to get away with a lot more. One day, he was out doing sailing with some of the campers, when one of them beat him at some sort of game. Said counselor responded by pushing said kid off the paddleboard before loudly declaring, "I forgot and can't swim, sorry," in fully a shot of many counselors and senior staff. So they suspended him for a month. Upon returning, he decided it would be a good idea to walk around in his cabin full of 10-year-old boys fully nude, which finally got him fired. Worked in AT&T. Pretty flexible schedule as long as we got our testing done by the end of the day. Got drunk with my friend A at lunch. Really boring job. so it wasn't unheard of to go watch footy games and get drunk at lunch. Me and A get back to the office from lunch. Unfortunately he is Friday 11 PM drunk by now. A decides to send an email out to the gang about what an shat idiot etc. Our bosses, as you probably expect, A is drunk and fricks the whole thing up. He sends said email to our boss instead of the gang. A, drunk as a skunk, panics like anyone dependent on a job would, and gets into Mission Impossible mode. He army crawls into our boss cubicle. Fortunately our boss was a lazy frick. So, as our boss would do most afternoons, he was out and about shooting the crap with random people in the office this afternoon too. If you need a pic, imagine an ugly and mean Michael Scott. Anyway, the computer is not locked. A finds the email, deletes the email, army crawls his Indian butt back to his own cubicle. Success. Job kept. Took the company car while off the clock. Drove drunk to the beer store. In Canada we have the beer store. Got more alcohol. Walked home, leaving the car not only unlocked, but open. He was a unionized worker and said no one ever told me not to do that. Another one. Same company. Not exactly the same. There's a 6-week training, with exam at the end. 10 minutes into the exam a guy gets up, says frick this bulls and walks out. Last I checked he still works there. No one ever told me not to do that. The cost stands a defense. I once worked with a man who just couldn't seem to keep his pants zipped and also aggressively refused to wear underwear. Ironically enough I think the fact that he was pretty overweight and unpleasant to look at kind of saved him because people just kind of did their best to look the other way when he was around. On at least 3 occasions I accidentally saw his dong. He just got a new job and quit about a year after I started working with him. I'm not sure if anyone in HR ever did anything accidentally. Girl I worked with at Pizza Hut prank called the place on a Friday night at 6 during a heavy rush. Was placing a huge complicated order for delivery. Then said hey never mind it's me, what time do I work tomorrow? I'm only a shift manager so I couldn't fire her and my boss has no guts to do it. She does things like this all the time. Actually don't bother coming in at all tomorrow. These pranks are really unprofessional. We're going to have to withhold your most recent paycheck and we'll be notifying. Nah just kidding. You work at 11 but cut that crap out, it's not funny. No call no show 3 days in a row. Then did the same thing 2 days in a row a couple weeks later. Still didn't get fired. But then she just stopped coming in altogether. And when my manager called her, she said she quit 3 days ago. Without saying anything. So at least she's gone. Retail. I work at a women's prison. Female officer becomes friends with inmate Jones even though that's a big no-no. Officer brings inmate Jones a cupcake for her birthday, an even bigger no-no. She gets moved from one area where she was working alone to an area with other officers. A couple months later they need her to cover a different work alone area. Guess who keeps showing up at the new area to visit? Inmate Jones. Now female officer is being watched again, but not fired yet. I work IT at a large hospital with a number of satellite clinics. We were moving some racks during the remodel and one of them has the main router with the point-to-point connections for our satellite clinics. I labeled the cables, removed them and moved the rack. With help, of course. I plugged all the fiber cables back in and watched lights go green. Turns out I didn't see all the lights go green. I was just tired and impatient. Also turns out I didn't label them all correctly. I killed the internet at a satellite location for 3+ days while we thought it was a broken line card. Nope. I was just an idiot. This router's first port was numbered 0. My first cable was numbered 1. Everything was off by 1. Still employed there. I worked for a prison. An ADSEG inmate filed paperwork on a female staff member accusing her of masturbating in front of his cell. Sure enough they review the camera and for 7 minutes she stood outside of this guy's cell with her hand inside of her pants. When they investigated this incident she claimed she was scratching. Kept her job. Okay, so this summer I pressure washed for a professional pressure washing company. At the time I was only 16 driving a huge box truck all over creation to do petty jobs. Anyways, I had to drive 3 hours to a job one day and the pressure washer wouldn't start. I was in and out of a auto shop borrowing tools trying to fix a machine I knew nothing about. My boss told me to try one last thing and out of my frustration I bought the part and never tried it and just drove home telling my boss it didn't work and I was going home no matter what he said. When I got there he tried the new part and of course it fired right up. Instead of getting fired I got $1 raise because I told him I was tired of his bulls. I worked at a ski hill last year. My days off weren't on the weekend so I had to learn how to party but still be able to show up for work the next day. Now one night I took it a little overboard. I went to a house party and didn't bar and coke and I was also extremely drunk. Some regrets. I didn't sleep and probably finished my last beer at 6 AM. My roommate drove us to work the next morning and I was sitting with my feet on the dash. Then my drunken stupidity wondered if I could crack the windshield with a kick. I could. Anyways, we got to work and I don't remember much beyond this point, but apparently I was giving all my co-workers hugs and making a fool of myself. Not sure why the manager still let me up on the hill, but I left my lunch, goggles, gloves, and dignity at home. I fell over multiple times skiing down to my lift. I was only checking tickets so my job doesn't really require much responsibility. I set up my rope lines and then passed the frick out for a couple hours. To this day I'm ashamed for what I did and was shocked I wasn't fired. I did pay for my roommate's windshield even though he wrote off his car before he had the chance to repair it. I have some issues. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.